The first time I walked into a smokehouse outside Mount Hope in Holmes County, Ohio, in August, I expected noise. I expected the thin electric whine of a hidden machine. I expected a fan blade somewhere. I expected a thermostat click. I expected a secret modern system doing the real work while the old wood walls got the credit. What I found instead changed something in me. The air hit me first. Cool, dry, slightly sweet. It carried hickory, salt, old iron, and the mineral smell that stone keeps after rain. Two narrow vents near the roof cut pale bars of light across blackened hooks. Outside, the cicadas were screaming. Inside, there was almost nothing. No motor, no compressor, no steady mechanical hum pretending to be normal life. I stood there for 11 minutes looking for the thing that should have been there. It wasn't there. And that was the moment. Short, clean, final. I understood I had been wrong about the whole subject. Meat does not stay safe because a machine blesses it. Meat stays safe because you change the environment before bacteria get a vote. You change temperature. You change moisture. You change airflow. You change time itself. That is the whole trick. Not magic. Not nostalgia. Not romance for old barns. Control. Then I noticed the room more carefully. The floor was stone, cool under my hand. The walls were dry, not damp. The hanging rails were dark with years of smoke, but clean. The vents were small on purpose. The shaded side of the building faced the breeze. Nothing in that room was decorative. Every inch had a job. Keep meat out of the danger zone. Keep insects away. Keep moisture moving. Keep flavors building while spoilage loses. Behind the smokehouse sat the second half of the method. A spring line fed a shaded trough. Cure crocks rested there before smoking. That was when the whole sequence snapped into place. The cold came from earth. The protection came from salt. The final barrier came from smoke and drying. No refrigerator, no freezer, no monthly bill. Just sequence. Old sequence. Exact sequence. I went back in November. I went back again after first snow. I went back in spring mud and in summer heat. Every visit felt like an argument with the modern world. I kept expecting to find the hidden replacement, the cord behind the wall, the chest freezer in the back room, the tiny stainless machine doing the real work. I never found it. What I found was repetition. Same hanging rails, same shaded wall, same vent openings, same weak hickory fire, same patience, same refusal to pay a machine to do what a building, a season, and a handful of salt already do better. I've been going back to Holmes County every season for 3 years, and every time I find something the building industry forgot on purpose. So here is the promise. By the end of this, you will understand how Amish families preserve meat without refrigeration. You will know why it works. You will know how a beginner version can start for $186 to $264. And yes, this works even if your house was built 50 years ago. Stay with me. Because what I found in Holmes County uses the same physics the Persians used to store ice 2,400 years ago in brutal heat. At the center of this is not folklore. It is food science. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, Food Safety and Inspection Service makes the rule brutally clear. Shelf-stable meat only happens when you control heat, moisture, and microbial growth with precision. Kansas State University's Rapid Response Center says it even plainer. Salt reduces the water available for spoilage bacteria. Smoke adds antimicrobial compounds. Drying drops surface moisture again. That is the mechanism. It never changes. Think about your own body for a second. On a hot day, sweat cools you because moving air carries water away. A cast iron radiator works because heat moves from a dense material into thinner air. Meat preservation uses the same kind of transfer. You are not trying to keep water circulating inside the meat. You are trying to remove enough usable water that bacteria lose their working medium. Once that happens, the clock changes. The University of Wisconsin shelf stability limits for dried, ready-to-eat meat put one key line at a maximum water activity of 0.85. That applies when pH is 5.8 or lower. Below Below that line, growth stops. That number sounds abstract until you picture what it means in your hand. 1 pound of raw meat usually finishes near 4 ounces after proper drying. 12 ounces of water leave for every 16 ounces you started with. In food engineering, that moisture reduction ratio is the game. Your refrigerator removes none of that water from the center of the meat. It only slows the countdown while the power stays on. Then heat closes the trap. USDA guidance for jerky says meat must reach 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 165 for poultry before or after drying. That is the kill step. After that, steady drying between 130 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit keeps the surface losing moisture fast enough to outrun spoilage. Smoke adds phenols and acids. Salt keeps binding water. So you get several barriers at once. Heat, salt, air, smoke, time. Call it the preservation coefficient if you want a hard comparison. You remove 12 ounces of water for every 1 pound of raw meat versus 0 ounces by a refrigerator alone. That is an enormous gap in useful effect per unit of effort. The refrigerator is a pause button. This is a rewrite of the environment itself. That gap represents a massive market in equipment, power, service, replacement, and convenience every single year. And that is why you have never heard of this. I felt that truth most clearly in Berlin, Ohio, just after first snow. The wind outside cut through my coat. The lane was iron hard. A buggy passed with that hollow wheel sound snow makes when it starts to crust. Inside the smokehouse, the air stayed steady and dry. I could hear one barn door hit its latch in the gust. I could hear horses shift in the next shed. I could not hear a machine because there wasn't one. I watched a row of cured bellies darken above a weak hickory fire. The smoke moved slowly. Not thick. Just enough to kiss the meat and keep going. A man named Eli checked the upper vent with 2 fingers. Then looked at me and said, Cold first. Salt next. Smoke last. Rush it and you lose it. He said that without drama. He said it like a rule proven by weather and repetition. The kind of rule families keep because ignoring it costs Eli told me his people had used the sequence in Holmes County for 4 generations. Before Ohio, the knowledge moved through Pennsylvania. Before Pennsylvania, it moved through the canton of Bern, the Palatinate, and Alsace. In those places, winter killing, salting, and patient smoking were ordinary farm practice. He did not talk about it as heritage theater. He talked about it as the cheapest way to keep protein on hand when weather and money all mattered. Nobody told you. Not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you the freezer. A 1917 USDA farmer's bulletin called Killing Hogs and Curing Pork said the practice should be more extensively adopted. A 1921 USDA bulletin called Pork on the Farm said home curing had nearly gone out of style. Then it returned under pressure. That knowledge never disappeared. It was written out of the manual. It was waiting. One afternoon, I stood with Lydia beside jars of canned beef cooling on a bench near the kitchen door. She pointed toward the smokehouse and told me which meat went where. Strips and sausages first. Bellies next. Jars for the cuts too small to hang. Lard for seal and flavor. Waste almost never appeared. When I asked why they still bothered, she smiled like the question itself was backward. Why would we stop using what works? She asked. That answer stayed with me. Not because it sounded antique, because it sounded rational. Nothing worked alone. The spring line cooled. The crock cured. The smokehouse dried. The pantry stored. The kitchen finished. Each room carried part of the load. That is what modern design forgot. It turned every problem into one machine with one monthly bill. Later, Samuel showed me old hooks cut by his grandfather. He said some were older than the barn roof above us. He also said the family still timed the heaviest curing work to the coldest just as they had for decades. That matters. The method is old, but it is not careless. It pays attention to season, thickness, airflow, thickness, and patience. and patience.
The Amish didn't read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered. By paying attention to what the earth was already doing. If you want to see how deep this runs, go back far before Ohio. In ancient Persia, engineers built yachtchows with walls up to 2 meters thick and stored ice through desert summers. No compressor, no freon, no paid utility, just earth, shade, thermal mass, and geometry. They were solving the same problem you face now. Keep food from losing the fight in heat. Go west from there. Cato described salting hams with half a modius of Roman salt per ham. Then he packed them skin down in vessels until time finished the rest. Not the same building, not the same principle. Reduce water. Reduce control exposure. Work with the season instead of against it. Go older still. The National Center for Home Food Preservation says early cultures in the Middle East and Asia dried food in sun and wind by 12,000 BC. That tells you how old this is. Medieval Europeans later built still houses when sun alone would not do the job. Every civilization that mastered scarcity arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from the canton of Bern and the Palatinate to Pennsylvania and Ohio more than 200 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. They never needed permission to do what made sense. Now comes the part that should make you angry. In March 1956, General Electric launched the Live Better Electrically campaign. In 1958, Westinghouse added a $2.5 million pledge to push it harder. They were protecting appliance sales, electric heat, and the replacement cycle built into the modern house. Every spring house that still worked was a threat. Every smokehouse still in use was a threat. Every cellar that cut dependence was a threat. Here is how the squeeze worked. The Medallion Home Standards came from General Electric, more than 900 electric utilities, and 180 electricity manufacturers. Those standards required at least 6 major electric appliances in the house. The published standards specifically named an electric refrigerator or refrigerator freezer, it also required at least 100 amp circuits and at least 20 circuits. The sales plan was written into the house. That is not neutral design. That is infrastructure built for recurring purchases. Once builders, lenders, and buyers accepted the all-electric house as the modern default, older food rooms started looking obsolete. They still worked perfectly. They still did not matter. The spring house became quaint. The cellar became storage. The smokehouse became a photo backdrop. Not because it failed, because it did not feed the new cash stream. The Allies were not hidden. Ronald Reagan carried the message on General Electric Theater. The Rural Electrification Administration had already helped rural families finance appliances. Local utilities spread the same message town by town. Manufacturers sold the boxes. Media sold the aspiration. Government expanded the wire. Industry locked in the demand. Everyone in that chain made money. When you forgot how to preserve food without a plug, then the result landed. Then an entire field of knowledge disappeared from architecture schools, farm plans, kitchen design, outbuilding practice, and ordinary household memory. Not because it failed, because it wasn't profitable, because the reflex never stopped. In 2023, New York lawmakers moved after reporting showed a major gas utility may have siphoned customer bills. The money may have funded an anti-electrification campaign. In 2025, Influence Map said the American Gas Association and National Propane Gas Association were part of a coordinated push against building electrification. Same motive. Same playbook. Protect the meter. Same motive. Protect the dependency. Protect the monthly payment. The U.S. home appliance market reached $61.7 billion in 2024. Every alternative revived matters. Every passive room restored matters. Every yard building reused means one less appliance sale, means one less service contract, one less replacement cycle getting booked. One less replacement cycle. That is the number behind the silence. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this already applies to people with land, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to buy equipment, you need a yard. If you want the exact beginner blueprint, do not start with a whole ham. Start with a small offset smoke cabinet built for safe smoked jerky or thin cured strips. Keep it simple, keep it cheap, keep it exact. Make the cabinet 30 inches wide, 24 inches deep, and 60 inches tall. Set it on 4 concrete pavers, never bare soil. Give it a sloped roof with 3 inches of overhang on each side. Water is your enemy, so is trapped humidity. Run a 6-inch black stovepipe from a separate firebox that sits 6 feet away. Let the pipe rise toward the cabinet at about a 2% slope. That cools the smoke. That also drains condensation the right way. Make the firebox from concrete block or a 16-gauge steel box about 18 inches wide, 18 inches deep, and 16 inches tall. Inside the cabinet, install stainless steel rods or 1-inch hardwood dowels as hanging rails about 8 inches below the ceiling. Put 1 low intake vent on the shaded side and 2 upper vents that each measure about 3 inches by 6 inches. Skin the exterior with plywood if money is tight. Line the interior with untreated cedar slats or food-safe hardwood. Use galvanized hardware cloth only on exterior vent screens, never where heat and smoke collect on food surfaces. For the cure, use kosher salt, brown sugar, and curing salt containing 6.25% sodium nitrite in exact recipe amounts. Curing salt containing 6.25% sodium nitrite is not optional. Plain salt can leave you with a cured surface and an unsafe center. Use lean beef, venison, or pork loin. Slice it no more than 1/4 inch thick and 1 to 1.5 inches wide. Cure it overnight in a food-grade HDPE tub or a stainless pan in a refrigerator or ice chest before smoking day. Then bring each strip to 160 degrees Fahrenheit first. That is the USDA kill step. After that, run the cabinet between 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Use hickory or apple wood. Keep enough airflow moving that the surfaces stay dry, never tacky. On a windy February day, a cabinet will turn 8 pounds of raw meat into about 2 pounds of finished preserved meat. You can do it in one Saturday morning and part of the afternoon. Your material costs stay low. Concrete pavers usually run $7 to $14 each. Exterior plywood lands around $28 to $46 a sheet. A 6-inch stovepipe section usually runs $12 to $19. Hooks, vents, screws, and dowels add another $24 to $51. If you scrounge the firebox materials, you can finish the cabinet for $186 to $264. Even if you buy everything new, you can stay under $412. That is still less than one decent chest freezer, and far less than feeding that freezer year after year. Maintenance is small. Brush ash out after each run. Wipe interior surfaces dry before closing the door. Relime or sanitize the cabinet once a season. Check the vent screens once a year. Replace cracked weather seals when they stop drawing right. That is it. One more warning. Galvanized metal inside the hot cabinet is not optional to avoid. Use stainless or plain steel anywhere heat and smoke touch food. Galvanized surfaces can off-gas and ruin both safety and flavor. Your conventional freezer costs $700 to $2,400 to buy. It costs around $8 to $18 per month to run. It lasts 11 to 16 years before landfill. This cabinet costs $186 to $264 total. It lasts 15 to 25 years. Your choice. Everything I've covered across this channel, root cellar airflow paths, lime wash pantry walls, gravity-fed spring cooling, I've put in one place, step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order the families actually use it. Link is in the description. But stay here, because what Eli built is the part nobody is talking about yet. If you believe knowledge was pushed aside to protect somebody else's profit, you already know what to do next. Hit subscribe, not for me, for what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they're done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop your state, the oldest meat-preserving practice your family remembers, or the last monthly freezer bill that annoyed you in the comments. I read every single one, and your answers decide what we cover next. Next week, I'm going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document reveals. It is about keeping a room cool with nothing but shade, lime, and moving air. The technique uses nothing but burlap, water, and wood. And the old report proves building experts understood it decades before selling you powered comfort instead. You're not going to want to miss that one.